everyone, I'm Yumi from Publift. We're an award-winning ad tech company based here in Sydney, where we help publishers monetize their content and improve ad revenue. Welcome to our very first episode of AdThoughts, where we dive into the world of ad tech by picking the brains of our expert team members. Today, we're exploring core web vitals for publishers. Aside core web vitals, health is always an ongoing conversation between our internal team and publishers. So we know how important it is to maintain good scores to be on Google's Good SERP book or Search Engine Results Page book. Today, I have James Nielsen with me, Publift's head of onboarding. James oversees the entire onboarding process, ensuring that publishers who work with Publift are expertly integrated with our technology so that they can start monetizing their content. James has overseen the onboarding of over hundreds of websites and has a great understanding of all things core web vitals. Say hi, James.
Hi, Naomi. Nice to be here. As Naomi said, my name is James and I'm the head of the onboarding team here at Publift. So once publishers learn about our services and have spoken to our sales team, they're passed over to our team of skilled solution consultants who walk our publishers from go to woe through the entire onboarding process. And one of those things that we often engage in conversations around with our publishers, because they're not only looking to increase revenue, obviously, they also want to maintain good user experience for their sites. And one of those things that we speak about are core web vitals.
So let's dive right in, James. If I were a smaller publisher, perhaps still learning the ropes and grappling with all of this ad tech stuff, how would you explain what core web vitals is to me?
So at its core, Core Web Vitals is an attempt to measure the user experience of a website. And it's also something that now feeds with increasing weight into Google's core ranking algorithm. So from a publisher's perspective, yes, it is something you should seek to understand. We should seek to deliver the best user experience to all of our site's users as we can. And from that perspective, it's a great tool to see how you're doing and where you can improve it. That being said, there's also been a lot of fear around it that's probably stemmed from a level of misunderstanding about what it is. It is, again, it should be used as a way to kind of benchmark yourself and seek to deliver better user experiences from an advertising perspective. The better experiences you can deliver, the more traffic you're likely to drive, i.e. the better advertising revenues you can get as well. But it will be more relevant to some than others. For example, this is a Google project, for want of a better word. It's built into the Google search ranking algorithm. So if you're a site that doesn't derive any significant traffic from organic search from Google, then it's going to be less important in terms of traffic to your site, impact on revenue and so forth. Again, great tool to measure yourself and how you deliver and what the kind of experiences you're delivering, but going to have less of an impact from a kind of a business perspective if you're getting most of your traffic from direct routes or coming in through socials, for example. It's also important to remember that it is one of, I think, about 200 ranking factors within the Google ranking algorithm, albeit an increasingly heavily weighted one. But things like search query and intent is still going to be the main one. And an example that I sometimes give to explain that a little bit more, if, for example, you are a badminton club in Darwin, Northern Territory, I can't imagine that there's too many badminton clubs up there. Apologies for all the badminton enthusiasts in the Northern Territory, but I would imagine there's one or two. And so if someone goes into Google and searches badminton club Darwin, Northern Territory, given there's only one or two clubs, again, I'm assuming there, that search query, that intent is going to deliver you very high up the rankings, probably one or two, regardless of what your core web vitals are. Now, if you're in the situation that there was 1,000 or 10,000 badminton clubs, or use another example perhaps, a much more saturated market, then core web vitals are going to become increasingly important, right? Because you want to have the best there because it is going to inform that ranking algorithm, and you obviously want to rank ahead of any of your competitors there. Anyway, I mentioned all that just as a bit of a caveat. That, like anything, shouldn't be considered in a vacuum. Don't just get hit with, I don't know, if you're hit with a kind of an outreach email, you've got poor core web vitals. It's important to always understand, look, what does this really mean to me? And I mentioned a few of those kind of those caveats there, or how to go about that. Back to the topic at hand, core web vitals, what are they? As I said, a measure of user experience, and there's three main metrics that go into informing, or there's three main metrics that make up core web vitals. Those are largest contentful paint, or LCP, cumulative layout shift, or CLS, and then FID, first input delay. And those are the three main metrics driving your core Web Vitals scores. Now, each of those you get a ranking of, I believe it's poor, needs improvement, or good. Now, these are 75th percentile metrics, so it means for 75% of your customers, you need to be hitting the Google's benchmark. And for LCP, for example, that's 2.5 seconds. But I believe we're going to get into that a little bit more.
All right. And if we were to break all those down, should we maybe start with the most important one? So that would be LCP, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So the biggest one there is, I guess, LCP. And certainly for us with advertising, some are more important than others. And LCP, again, that largest contentful paint, is probably the most important, along with CLS. And so this assesses the loading time or performance of the elements present on the website, or specifically the largest element on the page. So it determines the time essentially it takes for that largest element to load on a page. Now, Google sets that benchmark there around, I know it's 2.5 seconds. And it's a 75th percentile metric. So as long as 75% of your user base are experiencing a LCP score, so the largest element of the page is loading in under 2.5 seconds, then you're going to get a good score from Google. And look, these are in line, which is kind of industry metrics and what people expect. I think KISS industry metrics suggest that about 50% of all internet users actually expect websites to load in 2 seconds or less. But yeah, Google sets that benchmark at 2.5 seconds. Over that, your needs improvement or entering into a failure kind of territory.
Right, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you open up a page and like the biggest photo or the banner isn't loading, you're probably going to exit it anyway and look for another site. So that 2.5 seconds makes sense, actually. So it's about loading times. And what are some of the ways our publishers can actually maintain good scores? Like, how would you suggest they can maintain below 2.5 seconds of loading time?
Yeah, so as you said, it's all about load time. So you want to prioritize kind of site design to keep that in mind, right? And these measures too. That's a pretty helpful caveat or asterisk to call out. This is all everything for above the fold, right? So everything that loads in that initial viewport. Anything below the fold isn't counted in these things. So you want to make sure that you're not running super heavy or large hero images right at the very top of the page, or you've got them compressed accordingly. You want to prioritize load events as well, so you're not overburdening the main thread. Yeah, so that LCP metric, if you do have larger images above the fold, make sure they're as compressed as possible. Make sure they're called or loaded in that load order as early as possible. Critical information above the fold only is the information I'm showing when a person initially hits the site important for that visitor. If it isn't, maybe we consider moving it down. Do you really need that hero image? Could it be smaller? Could it be compressed? So anything that kind of prioritizes load speed.
That actually doesn't sound too complex for a metric that seems so important, actually. So that's good to know that it's quite manageable. And how about CLS, or cumulative layout shift? I hear this quite a bit in our meetings, so it'd be good to have a nice breakdown of what it is.
So cumulative layout shift, or CLS, is about visual stability of the page and unexpected shifts in a website's page layout. So what does that mean in practice? I think we've all had that kind of frustrating user experience. And again, user experience being the operative word here, and why these kind of core Web Vitals were brought into existence in the first place. You're on a page and you're about to click on something, and then all of a sudden something finally loads and all the content in the page shifts down. So you might be trying to put in details, or you might be trying to click a link, and all of a sudden you click something you didn't mean to, and you're redirected to a page you didn't want to go. Yes, and that's a frustrating user experience. So from a CLS perspective, the value there that you want to maintain or stay below is 0.1 to maintain a good user experience according to Google. And again, a 75th percentile metric, 75% of your visitors need to be scoring kind of less than 0.1 to be classified as quote unquote good. Again, this is only everything that's above the fold.
Right. And what would you say are, how can our publishers keep these shifts to minimum? I'd assume that a lot of it could be due to ads, like when the ad refreshes and then it changes size. And if the size is different from the previous ad loaded, the content shifts. Is that something that commonly happens with publishers?
Yeah, so specifically with our publishers and ads, because and what we do with header bidding and the fact that there's an auction being run in the browser, it can take time for that to finish, for the winning creatives to be delivered to the page. And so sometimes that can, if they're not delivered to the page until most of the rest of the content loads, then the insertion of that ad creative can cause that cumulative layout shift, things to move around on the page. So typically what we want to do here is we want to do things like fixing the height of divs where the ads are going to be displayed in line with kind of the maximum size creative that we expect to be served there. So if I've got a banner ad at the top of a page, that's, for example, 728 by 90. The div that I'm going to have that ad serve into, I want to fix those dimensions at 728 by 90, for example. And what that means is the space will just already be accounted for when the page renders. And initially it might be a blank box, but then very quickly after that, within those couple of seconds, the ad will then serve into that div. But again, because we've already provided for the space on the page, we're not going to get that layout shift where everything else drops down the page. And again, whether an ad refreshes and we're serving different size creatives into that div, as long as we've fixed that parent div, we're not going to get that kind of stutter that open and closes different ads, refresh or different sized ad creatives serve within that div. Yeah.
And how about that last metric we have, or 3 out of the 200, but the top 3 that we like to focus on, FID?
Yeah, so from our publisher's perspective and in regards to us putting ads on the page, FID, first input delay, it's the least of the least important of the 3 metrics, or said a better way, it's the one we tend to impact the least. So for LCP, the ads that are loaded on the page might well be the largest element. We want to make sure we're getting that auction and everything kicking off as early as possible, so they've got the best chance of being served on the page before that 2.5 second benchmark. Cumulative layout shift as well, because there can be that slight delay with the auction and the ads getting returned to the page. We want to make sure those divs are fixed, ready and waiting for the ads to be served into, so we don't get that CLS. FID, on the other hand, or again, first input delay, this is a measurement of essentially the responsiveness of the website, or it measures the time from when a user can then physically interact with your site. So there might be a clickable button. You click on it and nothing happens for 2-3 seconds or whatever it might be. That's that delay that's talking about in the first input delay. And that might mean that other processes that are happening in the thread haven't finished yet, right? And so then your request, essentially, when you smash that button on the page, that's waiting to be executed while other stuff executes in the main thread. And again, that can be a frustrating user experience. If you're clicking away on something and it's not acknowledging you because the page is still loading, yeah, that's a poor user experience. Now, again, as I mentioned, a less impactful metric, or rather a metric we tend to have less of an impact on compared to the others. But on that, I think it's 100 milliseconds. So you can't have a FID score of more than 100 milliseconds. Otherwise, you're going to start quote unquote failing that metric.
How can publishers improve their FID then?
Yeah, look, it's pretty straightforward. As I said, as I was kind of alluding to, you want to execute the amount of work that's being, or limit the amount of work that's being done in the main thread, for example. So there's kind of 4 main things that you could do: reducing third-party code, third-party scripts on the page that are running in the background. The longer they take to load, the longer it's going to take for the page to be interactive. Reducing kind of JavaScript loading time. It's an important part of delivering good user experiences. However, don't go overboard with it. For example, having potentially needless bells and whistles or dancing text or what have you on the page. It might look pretty, but is it delivering any value? Is it just slowing down your kind of page load? Is it just increasing page weight, slowing down your page load? So yeah, minimization of the main thread load is going to help speed up that page. And then things like implementing lazy loading, which conserves bandwidth, delivering the main content that users need basically as soon as possible.
Like listening to some of the dialogues that have been happening in our meetings as well, it seems that it can be a struggle to actually get accurate information, like you mentioned there. Accurate information on what your core Web Vitals scores actually are. And because it's such an important thing, I can imagine it's really frustrating to not get one accurate metric or have like one source of truth to find out what your actual scores are. It's inconsistent, it's unreliable. How are you going to optimize your website? Like, you don't have any reference to base it off. So I know that in our team, we do have a tool that is basically able to give you almost real-time results. Would you be able to share with us about that?
Yeah, so basically, not the finer details. That might be a question better answered by one of our brilliant dev team. But essentially, baked into the tag, we have and through some Google APIs that are made available to us, we're able to extract this information direct from the web page. Again, these are all kind of based on load events that happen within the page, and so we can capture that information in a real-time fashion, and make that available to publishers.
So outside of the Publift product suite, do you have any other tools that you might recommend to publishers so they can, track their core Web Vitals health?
Recommend? There's a few. There's certainly some that I wouldn't recommend. Look, most publishers will have access to the Google Search Console, which is going to provide much better information. It's going to be based on actual traffic to their site, real user experiences. So if you have the ability to set up the Google Search Console for your site, I definitely recommend doing that. That's going to give you the truest picture of your actual performance against these metrics. There's other tools out there which I definitely recommend less. A decent one is Lighthouse. This is a piece of tooling that's built into Chrome DevTools. It can be quite information heavy, and so it can scare off certain people. It's a mix of, I believe, real data or primarily simulated data. Just don't quote me on that one. And the last one is PageSpeed. It's probably not one that I'd recommend. It comes in for a fair bit of critique across the industry, and particularly within development circles. And the reason for that is that a lot of people leverage it without understanding that it's simulated data. Okay, so it's not based on real world results. So often those tests will be run in a throttle, assuming a worst case scenario. So you might run from a location. The test might run from a location or a country that has poor internet speeds. The test will assume a very dated device. So it might assume access from an old Nokia or LG device running on a low 3G connection kind of thing. And so publishers will run the test, they'll get these scores back, and to their shock, they'll have these terrible scores, but without realizing again that it's been run on a very kind of worst case basis. Now, the majority of your users are based in locations with poor internet, are using old devices. Well, okay, well then that test would be quite telling of your usual user experience. But if the majority of your users are are based in a country like the US or the UK or somewhere like that has good internet speeds, they're accessing it off the latest devices, well, then that test would not be reflective of that, right? You want to test where someone's got great internet on a new device. And if you adjust those settings and run the tests again, which you can do in Lighthouse, actually, you'll see a very, very different result. So tools that I recommend, if you can get access to the Google Search Console and set that up, that's going to be the best. That's going to be actual measurements based on real world data on your users actually hitting the site. The other tools, while they can measure it, it's usually based on simulated data. And so you really want to understand if the simulation is reflective of your users.
So James, if you were to summarize everything we've gone through today, which was quite a bit, what are the key points would you like our publishers to remember?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, first and foremost, Core Web Vitals came into existence as a way to measure user experiences. And as a publisher or website owner, from that perspective, it's a great tool to understand how you're performing. What kind of experiences are you delivering to your customers? Are they good? Are they good? Are they satisfying experiences, or are they poor? Do they need improvement? I think it's also important to, as I said earlier, not consider any of these things in a vacuum, but truly understand what does this mean to me? there's been some fear developed around them. Are these relevant to my business? Now, certainly, if you're, for example, if you're a website that derives a lot of revenue from advertising on your site, you could get a lot of traffic from organic search, i.e. Google. Yeah, very, very important to you. Obviously, we want to nail those core web vitals. We want to rank as highly as we can. We want to get as much traffic so we can drive as much ad revenue. Yeah, so that's probably where that's probably what I'd want the publishers to take away from today.
Well, that sounds very helpful indeed. And thank you so much for sharing with us your expert knowledge on this. I feel like I've certainly learned a lot more from just listening to you today as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And just a little note to our viewers out there, if you found this valuable, make sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps other publishers find this type of content as well. Thank you so much, James.
No worries. Thanks very much, Naomi. Have a great day.
See ya. Bye-bye.